So Morgan and I just got back from 2 days at NAB in Las Vegas, and it was epic. And we realized that if we don't talk about it now, then we may get a little fuzzy on some of the memories. So that's what we're going to be talking about on this episode of The Debrief. Okay, so like I said, 2 days at NAB with Morgan and myself. It was an absolute blast. We're going to talk about it, but before we do that, could you guys please do me a favor? And if you haven't subscribed and you watch these, just go ahead and click that subscribe button. It's going to help us jump numbers, and everybody knows numbers means relevancy. So just kidding. The content is king. But if you guys would do that, that would help us a lot. Like, share. If you have any other friends who are in production or do anything remotely near what we do, we think this could be valuable to them. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go down a timeline of things that we went and did, what we saw, starting with the morning of leaving the hotel, you know. So if you want to take it away, we can start with that.
Yeah. So part of the exciting thing of where we stayed was at Resort World at the Hilton Hotel. And it's really neat because they have the Tesla tunnels. And so you're able to get in a Tesla, which is a really nice experience.
Yeah.
I'd never ridden in one before personally.
What an experience for your first Tesla ride.
Yeah. And Elon has created these tunnels that let you avoid traffic and everything and take you right to the convention center.
Yep.
And it was only like $4 for
So it was
the day pass.
$4 for the day pass. Now, if you were, you want to go super source? You want me to cut?
You can cut.
Okay. Sorry, we have a new way of doing things here. So you get in at the bottom of the Resort World, and it's $4 for an entire day pass, or I think it was $1 for a trip. But what was cool was if you were coming back to Resort World, no matter where you were coming from, it was free. So, of course, in a very casino fashion, they didn't want you to leave, so you had to pay. But if you came to them, it was free. But what was cool is, and you can talk about this too, was like talk about the lighting in the tunnels.
Yeah, so they had RGB lighting, and that was really neat to see because as you went through the tunnels, it was
very Tron-like.
It was like Mario Kart, right?
Yes, Mario Kart's a great description.
Yeah,
it was Rainbow Road, but in a tunnel.
And you'd ask the driver to turn off the lights at one point, which made it even better.
I'll probably be laying some B-roll over this, yes. And I did that on the last ride, our very last ride to the hotel before we left yesterday.
Yeah.
So I wish I had done that. So I have some other videos of us doing it with color, and you'll see the headlights. But my favorite shot is in this reel we'll have coming out, and we'll make clips with this and whatnot. But is when you're in the green one, and then the cars in front of you were braking, so their red lights were going out on the back of the Tesla. Anyways, we can get to the tech gear stuff. But to start off your day in a Tesla in a tunnel with an RGB lighting setup was something that doesn't happen in the place that we live.
Oh, yeah. And then also something that we learned was we had to go pick up our badges, which we went to the West Hall. Turns out we could have gone to Central or North to pick those up.
Yeah.
Because for those that are not familiar with NAB, they break it into different sections within the convention hall. And so there's a West, a North, and a Central hall.
Yep.
And most of the things
North and Central were the ones that we really wanted to see.
Those were all in North and Central. Well, we later found out we could have taken the Tesla all the way over there, which we did on the second day. And that would have saved us a ton of like walking. So you do a lot of walking.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, so. No doubt. Your feet, my feet hurt a lot by the end of day one. Plus, a little side note, our flights got delayed.
Yes.
So we didn't get to Vegas until, we didn't get to our room until 1:15-ish, which is like 4:15 our body clock AM, and we only left Charlotte on our flight to Vegas at 9:30 PM body clock. So we were super tired, but so excited that did not stop us from getting up at the crack of dawn. Which, when you're on the 35th floor in Vegas and there's deserts that are leading up to mountains in the distance, it's freaking sick. And the Space Needle thing was off. So yeah, that was all cool. But once you got there, we did go to West first. But we didn't go into the exhibit hall because nothing was even open yet. So we just walked around. But then we found what we really wanted to see. And we went into the main portion of NAB, which was freaking sick. It all started with the views set up with their robotic arm camera with the giant LED screen, and I think it was called the Unreal Ride.
Yes,
something like that.
And I thought that was interesting that they had that outside of the exhibit halls.
Yeah, it was in the middle of everything.
So you didn't even need a pass.
Yep.
I mean, you needed a pass because that's how they sent you the video and
right.
stuff.
Yeah.
People could walk by and see it.
What's funny is actually, no, you did not need the pass. You're right, because you scanned the QR code on the screen. So I'm overlaying right now as I'm speaking. I'm overlaying R2 rides because I've got both of them on. I need to get yours from your phone.
Yeah.
And then I did it twice because I was kind of lame and wanted to do it again. But so what you guys will see there is you'll see in the bottom screens like robotic arm moving, you sitting on the bike, and there's a monitor in front of you, and then above that you'll see the composited image from all of it. And we ended up talking to the guys that were sitting there, started to sort of understand the equipment they were using on a very micro level. I know some things you probably understood a lot more than me, but it was a fantastic, super loud, amazing color LED light display that it was like boom. The moment you walk in, it was like starting with a big bang, especially for us virtual production people.
Yeah, and they were using Unreal Engine. They had it all fully automated, which I thought was really cool.
Yes. Yeah, we were making a joke because it seems like this giant rig, and it is, but they had it set up where it was like, yeah, you only need to run one of these. So, hey, can you just click the button and sit here all day, and it'll do its own thing, and it's super cool.
Something they were doing, though, they weren't really. So one of the things we do is we render everything in real time using Unreal Engine with camera tracking. And something that they were doing at this, because I was curious how they were getting away with kind of some low power machine, like hardware, it felt like, was they had pre-rendered all of this. So all of the Unreal backgrounds and movement, and they had that synced up with the robot. So when you picked, I think there was 3 different options.
Yeah, you got on you got on the ride, and you signed a waiver. Then you got on the ride, and there was another iPad on the ride where you chose which one. It was like past, present, and future. And I did past and present.
Yeah.
Were the 2 ones that I chose. But yeah, so
yeah,
those were
pre-rendered, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the way through. And so that really helped them be able to kind of not have to make a ton of changes on the fly.
Right.
Which made it really smooth. But it was a cool demo.
Super
very
cool
expensive tech. But I could see ways of their workflow that we could utilize in our space, which was really cool.
They were using ShowFlow.
Yeah.
Which is something that we've conceptualized in the past. We do our Notion thing, but it did seem like ShowFlow. The way we found out about ShowFlow was they were triggering a notes file in Google Docs, and it was coming up with every ride and what set they picked, so that they had like a log of them all. And I asked them what was triggering that, because I was seeing them pop up as people were doing the ride, as we were like kind of looking over their shoulder. And that's how I found out it was ShowFlow. Yeah. And then there was more than just that ShowFlow, that they were using ShowFlow for. So
yeah,
it's really cool. Such a sick automated setup. That wasn't all of NAB, but the smack in the face of virtual production that you got going in there, I feel like there might have been a world divided where it was like us, and there's tons of people like us who are like, wow. And then there's other people who are not as interested in that. Like but that alone showed the parameters of what you can do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh, simple setup. It's actually one of our easier volumes to set up, probably because they have such large ones. And this one wasn't extremely large. It was big, but it wasn't extremely large. And it's like, yeah, this is our easy setup. And look what we were able to make you do. You rode a Tron bike through space and time.
Yeah. And that was really cool. And that was the overall theme of this NAB that I noticed, was it was really about virtual production and LED walls.
It was.
A ton of chroma key setups. All of them, I think there's constraints around the show floor. Obviously, you don't have a ton of space to set up your green screen, but some of the bigger setups were kind of interesting. We saw a lot of different lighting techniques.
Yeah, definitely a lot of different lighting techniques. Some people were, some people were shooting green light at the wall, which kind of goes against what we do.
And they were doing blue on the talent.
Yes, to separate. Yeah, so that was zero density, I believe, which shout out to owner and the guys at zero density, also Chromolite. We got to see, you'll start noticing that we're going to start referencing a bunch of the people that we met and talked to. And it was really cool to meet people that we've seen before and that we're friends. So seeing him was really cool. But also he was our way of getting connected with Chromolite Paint, who interviewed me. And we met with them and learned a little bit more. We learned that we did something wrong when we did our paint application. So it felt like I'm not exactly sure why we're going to go talk to them. That was kind of our vibe. We're like, yeah, we're going to go talk to them. I don't know about what, but after we left that meeting, I feel like we got a bunch of insight and they were really cool. But yeah, thanks to owner, we have that connection. So, but yeah, that was one of the, sorry, I rambled on about that. There's a talking point about chroma key that I'll bring up in a little bit. We'll keep going on our timeline here.
Yeah.
But it's probably the biggest portion. It might be my biggest takeaway from NAB, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. So.
Yeah. And so, obviously it's day one. We've got to walk all around, check everything out. We were seeing a ton of new technology and a lot of high-end technology too, which was really cool for me to be able to see some of the brands that I've worked with on much bigger shows, especially when I'm out freelancing, to interact with Canon, Panasonic, Ross, Blackmagic Design, which we use here. All the different major brands. And I mean, that
Sony,
was pretty much,
DJI. I mean, the list goes on and on. There were, you'll see in a bunch of the video that I have, I just shot in areas just so I could get every single sign that was hanging of like all the name brands that you would know.
And that was pretty cool to see all that. And it was a little overwhelming at first because it was just so massive. And you're like, how am I going to cover all of this?
Yeah, which you did a better job than I did.
And so I told you this at one point. It felt like they were adding something like every hour because I would find something new. I'd walk the same area like 4 times and still felt like I was missing.
See a logo that you didn't see before?
Yeah.
That actually gave me a slight bit of anxiety, especially shooting B-roll. So I walked around on the first day we just connected and did things, but I walked around the second day with my personal camera, my C70, and I had it I just went handheld and shot a bunch of things. And I was like, every time I was walking through the same hall multiple times, shooting something different every single time.
Yeah. So that's a main thing that you're if you do go to NAB that you're going to find is like, oh, there's so much to look at. We had sort of a scope of places we definitely wanted to go see.
Yeah.
But also we had like categories. So for us, we were looking at the virtual production stuff.
Lighting specifically.
Tripods.
A grip.
Working through some issues with our teleprompting solutions. So looking at those.
Yeah. And we were going to meet Vive Mars. We'll talk about them. And we met with Chromolite. And then, so there were some vendors that we had scheduled time with. We were going to schedule time with Blackmagic, but ended up spending plenty of time at their booth. And we can talk about that now too, was like initially the very first thing we did was we walked outside of North and Central and we're like, what can we see? Which one do we want to go to first? Because we were waiting on it to open. And we saw Blackmagic and Ross right there was that North or was that Central?
North.
Yeah, so it was at North. So we went into that one first. And we spent a ton of time at Blackmagic, but we left not really having talked to anybody. And we walked around the corner and we saw ProPsych, which is a psych wall company. And we built our own psych wall, and that comes with its own pain points. So it's really interesting to learn about companies that make the pre-molded corners and all that stuff, which could be useful in the future. Funny thing is the main guy from the company lives in the town that I grew up in, south of Nashville, Tennessee. And so we connected, and I met his son, too, who was playing guitar on set. But he knew Ron from Blackmagic, who created the Ultimat, who now works for Blackmagic after Blackmagic bought the Ultimat. And he's the one who actually took us to him. And so we had a really cool conversation. So after like 15 minutes in there, we were networking and talking to people that we definitely wanted to know. And I'm going to go get lunch with the guy from ProPsych the next time I go visit my parents.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was cool. It happened like that. And it was like, oh, crap. We like walked away from that going to look at other stuff. We were like, dude, we were talking to people and it's been 15 minutes since we've been in the door.
And I mean, we'll go more in depth on some of the tech and stuff that we saw too. But one of the key things that I think is important about NAB is networking, like just talking to everybody that you see there. This show really gives you access to the engineers that made the thing.
Yep.
And so if you've got a problem, or if you got a feature request, or like, hey, how does this work? You can really go in depth because they know what they're talking about. And like, this is the guy that made it, you know. And
who gave you that tip?
So we'll talk a little bit more in depth on this too. But there were several YouTubers here at NAB that we follow. One of them, Doug Johnson,
legend,
Doug Johnson Productions,
absolute legend.
He was there, and during some of our discussions, somebody asked him, "Hey, it's my first time at NAB. What are some like tips that you can give a first timer?" And he said, "You know, it's cool to walk around and see all the new things, but talk to the people, network." He's like, "You can read about the product online at any time, you know, after the show."
Yeah, you can get the spec sheet.
Yeah, so it's not like you have to have any special, you know, tools to have that. But he's like, the engineers and the people that you're going to meet today, you're not going to be able to talk to them. Because you're going to have to email support, and we all know how that goes. They're going to be like, "Hey, have you tried turning it off and on again?" Things like that.
You're going to get the gamut. And you're like, "No, I know more than you do. Let me talk to the right person."
And so this lets you have access to the right person.
Hilarious.
We could talk about this too now. We were going around handing out a digital business card for our
QR
company.
code.
And I was getting contact information of the engineers that of some of our products. And a few of them are going to call me just next week and work through some problems that I'm having.
It's awesome.
Which is just amazing to have access.
That was one of the smartest things we did, is we created it's still my background. You're probably not going to be able to see it. Well, you can slightly. So that's our QR code. If you're watching on YouTube, just pause it and scan it. But that's our QR code covered in text messages now, I see. But Morgan and I made one for ourselves and then one for the company. I don't think I gave my personal one out actually at all. I only did Social U because I would show people our product and they were interested immediately. And I'm like, well, here's a QR code. Before we went, we had a bunch of pictures that we did and we created that. But we also, I just slapped a reel together. Like, I literally did it in the airport on our way before we flew to Charlotte. I made it all and got it up on YouTube because I was using Jump to use our computers here remotely. But that 25 minutes turned out to be one of the best things I did before we left, because that reel was what people saw, and it allows us to, instead of me to sit here and word mumble jumble about virtual production and try to tell you that we do something a little bit different that we think's better. It was just better to just give them the evidence. And it was like, I would sit there and talk to people and be like, yeah, so this is what we do, blah, blah, blah. We make it look real, da, da, da. And people are like, okay, cool. And I'm like, yeah, so here's a product. And they would like grab my phone and be like, okay, that's not real. Like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, but that's Rembrandt lighting. I'm like, yes. And so like for them to be able to grab that, see evidence and be like, okay, this is definitely different than what is up on stage. In fact, that's one of my talking points. That was my main strategy. I went around to all the different chroma key setups and some LED too. I would do the same thing, but I would notice that, like, you sent us some pictures in the group, like the keys aren't great and the virtual sets aren't great. They're virtual sets and these people are keyed out, but it's like, I know that is. It's obvious that it's not
Nobody's
real.
Hiding it.
Yeah, exactly.
We met with one, because our goal with our chroma key is that you cannot tell that it's green screen, right?
Right.
We met with a cable manufacturer that makes the cable covers that we use for.
I have it on my keychain, but it's in my bag. I don't remember. It's their little business card. It's like Easy Cable, or here, cut to your shot. I'm gonna go get it.
So while Jay's getting out, I'll kind of talk about that. So their booth was near one of the virtual production chroma key setups where they were doing the camera tracking and all that stuff. And we were talking to them and they're like, okay, you guys do the virtual production. And I was finding this a lot with people that I talked to at the show when I was telling them about our virtual production. And they're like, okay, yeah, we've seen some of that at the show. And then I would show them ours and they're like, wait a minute, this is different.
Uh-huh.
And the guys at that booth made a point that
there was one
dated.
right down the way.
Yeah.
Like as we're talking to them, there's green screen. It was everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's right there. And he pointed at that one, and then he said what you were going to say.
Yeah, and he said it felt very dated. Like it didn't seem like very like high end.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because the booth he pointed at, I think it was Stipe or like one of the major tracking companies that does real-time camera tracking.
It was the Brainstorm booth.
Oh, was it Brainstorm?
Yeah, because it was no, I'm lying, because that was LED, then green on the left side.
I think it was Stipe.
Okay.
Which does like high-end camera tracking. I might be totally pronouncing their name wrong, but they do some of the high-end camera tracking solutions, similar to Moses, which is the other system.
Gotcha.
That a lot of high-end broadcasters use.
Right, kind of like zero density in the lot.
Yeah,
of all built in one. Yeah, so they're called TechFlex. So techflex.com. So this is just green. It's just a color. They made some sleeves to cut up and give out to people, and it's a cable cover. So it goes over. You know, we have drops in the studio that have 6 cables in them, and so this is another one of their. This was their like business product. This one unwraps and then it wraps around your cable. We use this in this size actually. But yeah, so this green is just the color that they chose. But what was cool is we talked to them and it was like, conversation's over. Think we're moving on. You said, oh yeah, grab one of those or whatever. And then we started talking to them. And because I grabbed the green and we started talking to them about production, they told us that they actually made a product to cover cables in the chroma key green color, which was really cool.
And we have a client that we built a desk for.
Yes.
And it sits on our green screen. But the issue we've always had is the cables. How do we get power? How do we get
because the desk has a TV and lights in it, so we have to have power, SDI, and any other cable that needs to be run over there. And so typically we use this ugly, not matching green tape, but these guys designed a product specific to it. So definitely going to look into getting some of that, because that could be really cool. Clutch. And then they showed us some other ways of how to use the product. So, I mean, we got ours off of Amazon. You don't have to go to a company like TechFlex.
But they make a lot of that for those other companies. That's what he was saying. He
Uh-huh.
was like, hey, you may have bought it off of Amazon. And it may be called Alex Tech Cover or whatever
But they got that product from us.
But they got it from them. So I think that was a big deal for them. Let's kind of talk about that too. Interactions with vendors.
Yeah.
For me, one of the big things was like when a vendor would come up and talk to me, and it was like, okay, cool. Now I'm more interested in your product.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, like come over and just kind of broken the ice, you could say.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, there was a difference between people who did that and people who didn't do that.
Yeah.
Because like there were almost burps directly into the microphone. There were smaller companies that would have been cool to talk to, but yeah, they weren't as interactive, and it felt like, I don't know, it just wasn't as exciting. And there were smaller companies. But then if you go to the bigger companies, you're going to be approached and you're going to have a great conversation. And that's just the difference in the experience of going to a trade show before. So like Rode, you know, you guys know Rode and you probably watch their product videos. Well, like we had a conversation with the guy who does the product videos at NAB.
Which was awesome.
And I got his card. I'm going to email him. He's going to send me a Rode shirt. And it even has the gold dot on it. And because I pointed it out, I was like, the fact that you guys make the shirt with the gold dot, that is classic. And he was like, well, you have my card. He said, send me a message and I'll send you a shirt. I was like, cool, super, super cool. Super good way to connect. It was awesome. But yeah, you have a good point. People who had been there before and knew that strategy, like even my wallet's over there. What was the custom key thing that we saw? Smart key?
X keys.
No, not that. It was the very last one with the pilot program.
Oh, Maker X.
Maker X.
Maker X.
So, and what a freaking cool X company.
Pro, I think.
Yes. Basically open source, and you could make your own control board and customize the way that it works. So.
Yeah, which was really interesting because I had talked to them before.
Yeah, the day before.
The day before, because they had came to the YouTuber meetup discussion and kind of pitch their product to us at the roundtable discussion, which was really cool that they did that. And we'll go more in depth on that here shortly. But I purposely went over to their booth the next day to kind of get more detail and like play with it and talk to the engineer. And then I brought you back over on the last day, to kind of like check it out, right as we were leaving.
Sold me on it immediately.
Yeah, and it was so funny because the engineer came up while I was explaining it to you, and he was like,
well done.
You work for us? Like, because like you just explained it perfectly, you know. And I was like, well, I'd already been by and I'd gotten the demo from your colleague, and he was like, oh, okay, cool. And so we kind of explained where I'm sitting is the Ultimate control station. So over here we have a ton of different controls for
there's the Ultimate, and then camera control, lighting
control,
everything,
all of that. And we're about to add some a motorized jib and a PTC and a slider to our Unreal setup. So we're going to have even more controls here. And their product, what was really cool is it's all open source and you can customize it. So if I want more buttons or more dials or even a touch screen or a fader or whatever, a joystick, you could buy all these individual modules and then tie them all together and they can control multiple devices. It was such a cool thing. But one of the things that they offer is a pilot program.
Yep.
So after this video, I'm actually going to be working on that today. You basically have a proposal to them of like, hey, here's what we're trying to do. Here's what we think that control might look like. And they come alongside you. And if you're selected, they make it with you. They design it.
What was the guy's name that we were talking to?
His name?
Do you remember? He was the one who really explained the pilot program to us, and he worked for them. But
his name was Frank.
Okay, so when we met him, a super awesome guy. He was the one who was like, "Oh, I see you're selling the product really well for us. Well done." We showed him our product. Another good part about making the reel and having the QR code, we showed him our product. He actually signed our information, and we got his contact info. And when he saw what we were doing, and we showed him pictures, he was like, you are the studio that is like, he was like, it's a no-brainer that you guys would be a perfect fit for the pilot program.
Yeah, so it's gonna be really cool. It's gonna be awesome to work with them to make some custom controls, because it's just super flexible.
That was an aha moment. Like, for people who watch this, like, I'm more in the film aesthetic realm. Like, I do grip, lighting, directing. I do some tech stuff. Like, I'm not like, I can do some things, but I'm not like Morgan and Andre who like speak different languages to me. But that was an aha moment when you guys were talking about open source and how things work and how it was all, how it functioned and how you could create the custom buttons. Normally I would like tone out and be like, cool, yeah, that sounds awesome, but really not grasp what you're saying. But that was an aha moment for me. So when I was asking real questions to the actual engineer who helped create it, and that was really cool to learn about the capabilities. And then that amount of learning, which is what NAB was all about for me, was learning. That amount of learning helped me understand other products that we were looking at too.
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
One of the things we didn't do a whole lot of, but you did actually more than me, was they were doing like demos or lectures, like learning classes. You want to talk about Live FX?
Yeah, Live FX. I am looking for a way for us to use them. It's sort of a funny application for us because we're in a different environment than what they are used to, but I'll have to get the guy's name. I have his contact info and I have video I can put up here, but basically Live FX was giving a demo about LED production, but also said this entire thing could work for chroma key. He mentioned it multiple times, and I talked to him about it, and it was how they would take plates. So say you're riding in a car, which we'll also bring up something about riding in a car in a little bit. But picture riding in a car, but having green screen on the outside and putting an image, keying out that green and putting an image to make it look like you're driving in a car. Well, there's lighting setups, like they were using Quasar Science SICK lights that were all around him. And what they would do on those plates that they would go film was that they put a 360 camera on top of the car, and that would record like just a 360 view, a wrap. You know how a 360 works. It just kind of wraps around you and it looks like it's super fisheye. So as you're going through a subject, it like wraps. So what they were doing was taking that information from that video. That wasn't the actual plate, right? It was just an extra camera. And they were taking that information and using that color science and syncing their lights with it so it mimicked that footage. And since they had the lights wrapped around the person, it perfectly mimicked the 360 camera light sample, I'll say, without actually knowing what I'm talking about. So it flickered and did the effects like, so say you had lights overhead and you were driving and you went under a sign. Well, like on the plates, the sign goes away, but that light stays, right? So then the lights overhead would trickle above you and then behind you as if you were going under a sign.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We get all that natural spill and it just looks sick.
Nice.
And so, and for us, like we're not driving cars under signs in Vegas, you know, we're doing window stuff. So I talked to them for a little bit about how we could use that. It was really interesting. They were really cool and super willing to talk to anybody that was there. But yeah, that was at the B&H booth, which had a lot of cool stuff like Rode and other things. But that was I went to the counter at the B&H booth and pretended like I was going to buy an FX9 that was inside of their thing, but I actually didn't. But I just had never been. It's a dream of mine to actually go to B&H and buy a camera. So that was me gaining a real sense of what it's like, so I can continue manifesting. Nice. So that was one of my favorite things because it was like, oh, dude, B&H is here. I love B&H. Never actually seen anything physically labeled and branded B&H. So to see the green vests walking around with their tech people that were like talking to people, I told the girl, I was like, I'm not buying this, but it's a dream of mine to literally buy a camera from you guys. And she thought that was hilarious. So she just walked me through the entire process, and it was super cool. But that's where that live seminar I watched was going on. But there were so many that were happening about many different subjects. And so like you could walk through and in one spot you could hear 3 different lectures going on because people were doing them at their booths. Like Roe, the LED wall company, one of my best friends' dad was, he lives in Vegas now. He works for MSG. He was there. Roe was his old company. So he was showing me their setup. They had a 25-foot volume and they had a stage on it. And then, you know, everybody, Canon had one, View had a cool setup. They were into the space of education, not just product services. So that was really cool to see that blend too. So everybody was having these things. Not all of them were like introducing the new blah, blah, blah. Instead, it was like, who has questions about how to run a company, or who has questions about what type of lens you use for what type of shot, or there was a lot of that education going on. And that's my favorite thing, is to go to there and to learn and listen. And it was funny because the people that taught would notice that you were listening. Like I was telling you about yesterday, I guess I was accidentally talking out loud to myself whenever that guy was explaining quasar science lighting with the 360 thing. And I guess I was standing there going like this with my hands, like, cause I was looking at the lighting and how it was. And he like met eyes with me and was like, exactly, it wraps around you, blah, 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 blah. And then after we talked, and like you said, this is your chance to not only see the product, but talk to the people that are designing it. So that was a chance for me to do that. Yeah. It's almost like, after you told me that Doug told you that, which I'll say it again, Doug's an absolute legend to me. It's almost like there's a wall between you and the engineers when you deal with a company. So if you go to Blackmagic, not saying Blackmagic isn't accessible. I mean, we got Ron's cell phone number back in the day, but it's almost as if there's a wall, and at NAB the wall is not there. It's direct, and you're in person, and so you can walk up to them. Yeah. So just to double down on your point that you made earlier, that was one of the experiences I had, one of the many experiences I had with being able to take advantage of it. Yeah. So. Well, and then speaking on that, I want to touch more about the YouTuber meetup that took place. So that was really cool. Real quick, before you do that, when you walk around NAB all day and you didn't get any sleep the night before, you get tired. And I walked around, not going to say which, but one a little bit less exciting exhibit hall, and I was done. And you went to this YouTuber meetup, and I want to give you flowers for this, because I was super tired. We did the exact same thing. You went to the YouTuber meetup. I went to sleep and went to the room, and then I got to meet some people. But I was proud of you for going, because I remember we got invited to a party after, which we ended up not going to, but our meal and beers or whatever they were going to offer us was going to be paid for. Well, you texted me and you were like, well, I think the YouTubers are going to get food. And you were like, something about the other meal, and I was like, no, there's no chance in the world that you're about to leave hanging out with those guys, the guys that we all want to meet. And so I was like, whatever you do or whatever I do, you should hang out with them. Luckily, you guys came to the building I was in, but talk more about that. I just wanted to say that was super cool of you to step into a meeting. And Andre and I talked about this, to step into a meeting and like, you know, these guys, a lot of these guys know a lot, but you know a crap ton about what we talk about. So for you to go stick your neck out and talk in a meeting of people at a round table kind of thing, it's never easy and it's never not nerve wracking. So congrats on making friends and sticking your neck out and doing that. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. So it was really kind of unique. Aaron Parecki, who's a YouTuber, he kind of organized the event, and we just kind of all met outside. There was a parking lot area just outside of the convention hall that had a bunch of like food trucks and some of the satellite dishes, like some of the bigger products that just make sense to be outside. And so it was really neat. Of course, you had all your main players there. You had Doug Johnson with Doug Johnson Productions, Australian P-Lock, as we like to call Ryan Summerfield.
Shout out to both of those guys. Ryan is a super cool human being, but the reason Morgan said Australian P-Lock is somebody who watches these. So I miss the crap out of you, P-Lock, but he helped us do so much, not only from building our first rack, but from literally helping us rebuild and rewire and do this incredible control room that we're sitting in. So a lot of credit goes to him. I almost called him Ryan. But Ryan Summerfield from Australia and YouTube and Andrew P-Lock, our guy, look extremely similar. And if they got to hang out, it would be the craziest conversation ever because they're both really genius in that niche and that they both fill. So one day we have to get them to hang out. But that's why you said the Andrew P-Lock. So sorry, I keep breaking in on what you're saying and ranting, but that was a key point.
Yeah, and so they were there, and then
Brandon
from formerly A to Z, now Production Mastery.
Yep.
Great guy. He was there, and he was kind of driving the conversation, which was cool. It was really neat to sit around and kind of, they were discussing like, okay, what's everybody using for editing, you know? And there was a mix of Premiere and DaVinci and Final Cut, which was really nice to see. But yeah, he was just like, hey, what are some pain points everybody's feeling? How can we all work together to improve that?
He was the one that wanted to make y'all's meeting productive.
Yeah.
Like not just y'all meeting to hang out, but meeting to talk about the stuff that you guys do all the time and maybe exchange some information.
Yeah, so that was really cool. And it was cool to see that you had like kind of this division almost of the table of you had Aaron Parecki, Zephan, from ZMB Media was there. You kind of had this like divide on the table, I would say, of like YouTubers that are doing cool things and content, and then people like us and Ryan and Doug we're doing, and Brandon, who are doing this like every day,
right?
You know, as a job. And so we're playing with some of the much bigger things like Dante and Maddie and Blackmagic, like the higher end kind of stuff.
Right.
And so it was interesting because people would come around the table, just fans and people that knew these people. And you could kind of tell like people that had kind of smaller home studios would be around Aaron Parecki and all them, which is great. That's a great resource for them to have.
Yep.
And then some of us that were in more of the bigger productions would be on the other side. So that was kind of a cool kind of thing to see. Ryan and I share a lot of the same pain points when it comes to not enough inputs on like our video hubs and switchers, which was really nice to hear. And just being able to work through different problems. And
didn't somebody ask you, or what were you guys were saying? Like somebody was like, you guys max out your video hub?
Yeah. So
we're
Doug.
Like, and the Atum?
yeah. Doug Johnson was like, oh, I don't go past like 16 inputs or something per show. And Ryan, both
have
Ryan
16
and myself.
TVs. So.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, well, we kind of both do that. So that was kind of cool. And then like we kind of just talked about, I think one of them brought up the the fact, oh, it was Brandon. He said NAB this year feels a lot about LED walls and virtual production, which is cool. Sure. But Brandon's thing was like, hey, is anybody making a software that is like Unreal Engine, but geared towards us cinematographers, videographers?
Yeah.
Because he's like, Brandon, I found this out, apparently knows a little bit about Unreal Engine. And he's like, I know enough, but it's like super complex and
yep. No doubt.
Kind of like how we're learning it as we go. But yeah, I was like, yeah, nobody has really made a tool. But when he brought that up, that gave me the opportunity to really step in and kind of pitch, the studio here and what we do.
Nice.
And they were just blown away by our workflow, especially that we do it all live in 4K, real time.
Yep.
And that the customer walks away with their video file.
Nice.
And so that was just a really awesome experience to be able to share that insight with them.
Dude, will you
then I sent you a video of Aaron Parecki went on
I watched it
and did a video and talked about how he wants to do more, he wants to explore virtual production.
Yep.
So hopefully maybe we're collaborating with them soon on something like that. The other cool thing that came from this meeting, which I know you were super jealous about, Mr. Beast.
Oh yeah.
Their crew, his tech crew, was at the meeting picking our brains, which I was there, so that was really helpful.
It's just not a realm I ever thought, like not a few words that you would have ever put into a sentence and told me. I would have never thought.
Yeah. So they're talking about Mr. Beast wants to get into virtual production. So that's why they were there at the show floor. I mean, he could buy an LED volume. Let's be clear here.
Yeah. His space could fit the biggest one in North America, probably.
So I thought that was really interesting that they were there, so that was really neat.
Dude, you said something there that also we had a discussion about that I wanted to talk about on this. Mm-hmm. And this will go for anybody who does production, I guess, really. But for us, we were talking about how to describe what we do. So we had a conversation, but there was a point that I said something and I wanted to bring it up first because I think it was the biggest point that you actually were like, no, actually this. I said that when I explain what we do to people, it's tough. Like, especially if they don't know anything about virtual production. The ones who know are like, oh yeah, we get it. But like even just like friends or people that I'm meeting and trying to explain what we do from the film industry who don't know about it, it feels like a bunch of jumbled together words. And it eventually comes out as we do talking head content. And you said that feels empty. And I was like, dude, it does. You were like, no, well, I kind of told people about how we're in like the education space, which is extremely true. Like, it's not the only thing we do, but it's really our bread and butter.
Right.
And so I realized that I needed to change the way I described what we do to get that initial reaction from people, not only from showing them the reel. So when it's like, when you can explain something and it really actually encompasses what you do and it's not beating around the bush, because like if I start to, well, we key this out, we do this, that, and that and the other, it gets mumbled and jumbled. So what I was thinking is we need to come up with 5 words that defines what we do.
Yeah.
5 different phrases that we can all remember that just like nails home. It's sort of like developing an elevator pitch kind of, but in more of just like a sentence.
Well, and how I came up with the education content kind of pitch was because a lot of the things you were bringing up were like, we do 40 videos, over the course of 2 days and stuff like that.
Right.
And a lot of people are like, well, 40 video, that's a lot of content.
Yeah.
And learning, a learning platform makes sense for that kind of content because it's easy to prep ahead of time. It's
you're cranking out really lessons with people that know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Like if it's a professor teaching a course that comes in here, it's a freaking professor.
Right.
Like they know the course and they know what they're doing. So like being able to get that information out of them in a proper way, that helps our system move along. So So being able to tell people that that's our niche, which is like something I've also thought about, is like really helping people understand that we're defining a niche.
Right. Because a lot of the stuff we were seeing there was for film. Or broadcast television. And then like that was just, one of the big things that I was finding was like, okay, education content is kind of what we're really hyper focused on.
Yep, no doubt.
For us. And that works out really well. Quickly, I just want to kind of talk about how we went to Ross and explored their. We have a connection there at Ross that we know.
Yeah,
but also how that kind of led us down some Unreal Engine stuff with their virtual production, because they said something to us, Owen specifically, of like, yeah, we're getting the absolute data direct from like the camera head and the whatever, all that stuff.
So for people that aren't out there, Ross is kind of the pinnacle for large television production. Sports primarily.
Yeah.
And what they do is like, so if you watch sports, say you watch football and you're watching football and they have these graphics that pop up on the screen and it looks like it's in that space. And it's like, how did all that robotic stuff show scores and then warp away and go away? Or how does the yellow line for the first down stay on the screen? It's because, explain what Owen, which shout out Owen, by the way, thanks for showing us around. What was he like? So I sort of understand that, and I'm thinking that's going to take us into Exebo for the next piece of this conversation, because that's where you sort of explain that. Owen just said all this. These guys are doing this.
Yeah.
Explain that to us.
Yeah. So what Ross is doing, which I think is very, it's the way to do it. They're taking the data directly from the camera tripod. So when you turn the tripod, pan left or right or tilt, it's taking those numbers.
Right.
It's got motors that are listening to all that and transmitting that back to a computer that is just keeping that line locked on the field. And because it's not optical based, so it's not looking at the camera feed, it doesn't matter if a player crosses over or something gets in the way of it. It knows, because it just doesn't change. And they do that with the Spider Cam, all their cameras that they make.
Yep.
Something that we run into with the HTC Vive Mars is that you have to have a clear line of sight with the base stations. And if anything gets in the way, a light, a person, or whatever, it can go kind of crazy. We've got some stuff we're going to try to help mitigate some of that. But we really see this problem with our camera slider, because it's just like super sensitive.
Ultra jitter.
Yeah, and it just jumps all around. And that's where Ross was like, well, this would solve that. Well, the problem is Ross's equipment, while it's very nice, very expensive.
Very much so.
And it's meant for a much larger studio or like a stadium. And that's where that kind of makes sense. But for us, I was walking around and I found this smaller company called Exebo, which we had sort of heard about, but they're very like early. They're still, developing their tech and their website and stuff. So we weren't too for sure. And at the time, they were only doing playback. So you would record a video with their slider, and then you would play it back, and the slider would stay in sync with the video. And they were showing it with a TV behind it for like product shots and things like that. Well, now they've integrated that even further with Unreal Engine, where you're able to get that data direct from the slider.
Yep.
So it knows its position. You're not dealing with, can the base station see the rover? Is there anything blocking it? Things like that.
Oh my gosh, I just had an aha.
Mm-hmm.
If that is working, can we pull the cables up off the floor?
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry for those of you. That's just a little inside baseball there. Because we have to have our cables on the floor, because the rovers have, if anything gets in the way, or even reflections can cause trouble.
Yeah,
so that's
gets rid of all of that.
Nice.
The catch is it doesn't know its position within the Unreal universe. So like something that we're doing right now is we're setting a center point with our Mars, and that helps position our cameras. Well, they don't have a way to do that currently. You have to manually place it in Unreal Engine. But once it's placed,
it tracks.
Because it's like, okay, well, kind of like the Rhino when we calibrate the Rhino.
Yeah.
And it goes all the way to one side.
Yeah.
That's all they're doing.
You
and they go, that's 0, and then works its way from there. I talked with them. I talked with their engineers. They're helping design, because our cameras are a little bit bigger than the cameras they were showing off.
They're literally going to help design an arm for us to use so that we can buy their product.
Yeah.
Which that in of itself is awesome. Oh, you want our product, but your camera might be a little too big. Let us manufacture something for you. It's like,
and they're going to offer support. Like that's the big thing too, is like they're on Discord, so they're really easy to contact. I really believe in their product, And something we've been looking for is a jib, a motorized jib. And guess what? They had that.
Did you get any pictures or footage of that?
I have pictures. I don't have any.
Okay.
I don't have any like footage of that.
Well, maybe we can put that up on the screen now. I'll get that from you when I'm editing this because it was freaking cool.
Yeah.
Because it was small, right? It was definitely the smallest jib at NAB.
Right.
We had that conversation for a second, but for our space, it's like literally
it's the right size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really and everything. So the arm you're talking about, like when he handed us that gimbal head, I was like, I could also use this as a hammer and put it back on this.
Solid.
It was very solid. It felt really nice.
Yeah.
And other gimbal companies, sometimes you only buy the certain model and it filmed. Sometimes the metal can just feel thin, and it's like, I don't know. This was like, man, this is made for war.
Well, and something they're working on too, which I thought was kind of cool, was they're working on a track system.
Yep.
So that it can actually, we could have they said it's going to use speed rail, which we already have a ton of, and it can move within our studio on a track, which I think that's going to be really cool. He also told me that it can be mounted upside down. So,
that's right.
Wanted
Yeah,
a super clean setup.
Yes,
we put the track in the ceiling, and it just travels along. So that's also a really cool thing.
So mounted upside down, but we would drop. How would we drop the camera down?
Because it's on the jib arm. So you got that full. It's a mini robot arm.
Yeah,
just like what we were seeing.
That's cool
with the Unreal ride,
right?
Because that was also on a track. I don't know if you noticed that too. So they're a really cool company. I think that's going to get even more developed, and their whole thing is making it affordable. I think this slider, I think we looked it up, it's like $4,000 or something. It's not bad compared to what we paid for the Rhinos. So it's about on par with a good quality slider.
That's cool.
So that's going to be really cool. They had the focus, zoom, and iris control, and all that data comes in the Unreal, which was really nice. They told me they're developing a autofocus system, which Andre will be really excited to hear.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a little bit further out, but he's like, we're working on it. So I think that's a good thing to see there. But that was a cool kind of smaller company. They were off to the side.
Yep.
I kind of just like walked by and saw it, and I was like,
it's funny because it was all the way over. Like it was as far when you go into the north, or that was in Central. So if you go into Central, it was as far down as you can go, and then to the right and right there. And remember when I came and found you, and it was like, oh, this booth is so small, but what they have is perfect. Now you mentioned something. You mentioned HTC Vive.
Yeah.
Or Vive Mars. Sorry, I shouldn't say HTC Vive, but Vive Mars. We went and hung out with them, Tim and their crew. I'll let you speak to that. I know we got a sweet little goodie from them that we might not even be able to talk about, but they had it there, and I shot some B-roll of it. So, but when we went by, it was a smaller booth too. But like I said, you'll notice that we're going to talk about some of our friends. So. This was one of the cooler booths where we got to stop by and talk to somebody who we have been interacting with.
Yeah.
And to see them in person and come back, now it feels like we have even more of a connection with them. And they were fun. They were really fun to hang out with. Tim was such a cool guy. So
yeah.
What was your experience like at that booth?
Well, I think what was kind of cool about talking with them is they just announced that their new encoders for focus, zoom, and iris.
Yeah.
And getting all that data in the Unreal.
Yes.
They had support for some other encoders, but nobody could get their hands on them. And so they took it upon themselves to develop this, which I think is awesome. And I believe it's in partnership with Small Rig. And so it's going to be a really cool product when it comes out. They're actively developing it and things like that. Can't talk too much about it, but we're going to be helping with some of the development process of that and doing some trial runs. We were able to get our hands on some really cool things that we were able to bring back with us. They've implemented a feature request, which I thought was really cool. Just from communicating with them over email a lot, I've asked for some finer control within the Mars system. And they actually told me there at the show that that's coming in the next update, thanks to feedback directly from me, which was really cool.
It's awesome. See.
and to talk to them about that. So I think
they also interviewed you.
Yeah, they interviewed me, which was really nice.
Yep.
So that'll be out on their social channels.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
The other really cool thing that I thought was cool to see at the show was they were sponsoring or in partnership with a bunch of different exhibitors that were there. So I saw a lot of base stations and Mars units just out on some of the virtual production.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stuff.
Yeah.
And the studio cameras that we have, I was seeing those everywhere at all the chroma key booths.
Yep.
So it just helps, like,
copying us.
Yeah, it helps us feel better about our camera choices.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things like that.
Yeah, it was cool to stop by and see them. They're a lot smaller, and so it was like talking to friends. Even though you guys have interacted with them more than we have, but what's cool is being able to have people that know our content and see our content and compliment us on the videos that we make. And I'm like, dope, because that was me. Thanks. That's awesome to hear.
Was showing our Instagram to somebody.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you saw them showing a reel on our Instagram to somebody as we were standing there.
Yeah,
like before we talked to them. Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah. So that was one of our friends who we went and saw. Awesome to hang out with. Another one that we have to mention was Aaron at the guy and
IntelliTech.
Yes, Aaron and the guys at IntelliTech. So going to the IntelliTech booth was awesome.
Yeah, so talk about that.
Because so I really wanted to go over there. The first day I went and hung out with Aaron and some of the guys that he had there helping him, which I found their Instagrams and we've become friends. But I just want to see the updated product, meet him, tell him who I was. He automatically knew who we were. Thanked us for always putting content on our channel talking about them. But it's easy to make content with a product that you actually really freaking like and that really gets the job done. So it's really not hard to do that. But talking to him, I was going to go over there because there were things I want changed on the lights. And I thought maybe since I use them all the time, maybe I have a good opinion. Maybe he'll want to hear it. He already fixed everything I was going to ask him to do. Extended the baby pin on the back. Instead of it just clamping down on that little bitty baby pin, now it's like a whole C-clamp kind of thing that holds onto the back of the rig. It's very much, it's a lot more sturdy. They're selling them in all kinds of different sizes, RGB versus just regular. And I couldn't be more proud to see such a cool brand and such a cool product get better within just a couple of years, maybe a year's time. And he was really cool too, getting to know him and getting to hang out. You got to come by. I brought you back over there the second day and we talked to him. And I shot a bunch of B-roll because I know that they need, not that they need it, but since I'm going to be there shooting content, I might as well get as much of their stuff as I can so that they can have something to be shown on social media or anything like that, because I really do believe in Aaron and what they're doing at IntelliTech.
Talk about how people were coming around and like,
oh dude,
looking at it, and you mean
me
like,
being a salesman?
Yeah,
heck yeah. Just kind of like what you were saying about the other thing. Yeah, people would come up and they were looking at the MegaCloth 3.0s, which we have the 2.0s. But they were coming to look at the MegaCloths, and I was like, yeah, you thinking about that? Yeah, we're looking at them. Yeah, my studio has 4 of them. And they're like, really? And I'm like, here's X, Y, and Z reasons of why I like them. Here's the kind of lights we replace. Here's what we do with them. And they're like, wow. And what's cool for us is they go in the ceiling and they stay there. But a lot of these people were shooting on remote locations. And so and they're like, wow, that's cool. Is it easy to transport? I'm like, it's literally a cloth. You literally fold it up and it's light. You put it in a backpack and you're on your way. So yeah, being able to sit there and just because like I said again and again, I really believe in what they're doing at IntelliTech. Like I spent more time there than I did at Aperture, because at Aperture it was really hard to talk to somebody and they didn't have necessarily the exact products that we were looking for. So being able to go to IntelliTech is it's a trusted brand for us to get to know the actual person that does it, how cool he is, realize how cool his product is. It wasn't very hard for me to sit there and talk to other people who were considering it and tell them why we like him so much. And hearing the history behind his kind of education in film school, and then what he used to do and why he creates the lights that he does now, that was a really cool really cool thing to learn about.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the IntelliTech booth. It was awesome.
Yeah. And then I kind of want to talk on how we were running into people, these companies that we interacted with. But for me, I was also running into Unreal people that I had communicated with online.
Oh, yeah.
So that was kind of cool. I got recognized by a few people in the Facebook group that I'm in that love what we're doing with Unreal Engine.
Say, wasn't there a guy like staring at you and you were like...
Yeah, that was a fun experience. At lunch, I was like sitting there and I'm like, okay, I'm eating my food. And I look up and there's this guy kind of like looking at me and I'm like,
anyways.
Hello? And then he like walked over to the table and it turned out to be one of the guys I had interacted with on Facebook. And he was like, hey, man, and we got to talk a little bit. And he was telling me some of the issues that he's working through, which was really cool. Unfortunately, he couldn't talk for too long because he had to get to another meeting. That's a big thing with NAB is you're scheduling all these meetings with different companies to interact with them. But one of the cool ones that I got to meet was Federico.
Dang, I was about to ask you to bring him up.
Yeah, so he was really cool. Him and I have conversed back and forth online quite a bit. He's over in Italy and has a virtual production studio over there. And what's cool is we have a very similar workflow. We have the same cameras, we have the same Ultimat, we have the same computers. So it's very similar. So we're able to really troubleshoot some different things. And him and I have been working through lens calibration, like the focus breathing and the distortion. And so I think we were at the HTC or the Vive Mars booth. And he was like, hey, there was a little bit of a language barrier, which was fine. We were able to work through that amazingly well, which was really cool to see. But he's like, I need to show you, And so,
dude, you guys left.
Yeah,
we were standing there together, and he came over, and you were like, yeah, you guys met, and you were like, hey, I'm gonna, and y'all were just like, yeah, and I was going to do other things anyways. I was like, well, cool, awesome, and he was super cool, extremely nice human being, exactly aligned with what we're trying to do. So conversation was easy when we were trying to talk to him, but that was really cool. I think I told you, and if you played video games, I think you'll get this. But if I was telling you about this in a hotel, when you're a kid and you play Xbox Live, you can develop friends through an online relationship. There's other ways. The Xbox isn't the only one. But that was a lot like that moment you guys had. You guys have been talking remotely, doing the same thing, and then it was cool to see you guys like meet each other and know that immediately you were friends and you guys were going to go look at all the things that you've talked about.
Yeah.
Ways to fix different things and
so that was really cool because he was introducing me to some other brands and that different calibration software. And it was so funny because he was like, when do you get back home? Can we try this? When he gets back home to his studio, he's going to try some things and I'm going to try some things.
Yes.
And it's just going to further develop what we're doing in the virtual.
And I told him too, I was like, hey, my wife and my parents and I are going to be making a trip to Italy or whatever. And he was like, dude, if you come near Milan, he was like, come visit me. But then like you and I were hanging out, you're going to Scotland and you've got some free time and you figured out a way to get to Milan for like $100 or something. Yeah. So being able to go to Milan to go to a virtual production studio and then go back to Scotland would probably be the most Morgan Hugh thing ever. So
yeah,
you should totally do that.
But yeah, so just being able to interact with the different individuals there was like huge, especially when it came to Unreal. Because Unreal, there's so many of us doing so many different things. And so there's the video game people, there's the video people like us, the cinematographers, the programmers, the 3D artist modeler people, which you had met a few of those.
Oh, the photogrammetry.
Yeah, photogrammetry.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's so many of us in this space, and I think we're all working towards the same goal. So to be able to just interact face to face was really big. Tom was there from Indie VP, who is a very active member of the Facebook group. He was interacting with a bunch of people, just introducing them to virtual production, which was really neat to see. It was just awesome, that experience to see everybody, talk to everybody. I think if we, you and I have been kind of planning what next year looks like.
Yeah, because we're 100% going back.
Because we're definitely going.
I will go back to NAB every year until I pass away, probably. I literally said that on the phone to Andre.
Yeah.
Because you talked to Andre a lot more than I did, and viewers of this this channel will know who Andre is. And I literally said those words. I was like, I had such a cool time, like from the Tesla tunnel and the room to the convention to every single booth and loop it all the way back. It was such a cool experience.
And I think there's opportunities for us to
there's different ways to do it.
Yeah, to be a part of the panels. We'll definitely host meetups. I think like that's a big thing that we'll do.
Okay, so let's a little peek behind the curtain here. Leave it on the Super Source.
Yeah.
Because I think I want to clip and I want to have us both vertical for some of this stuff. Because I want to talk about biggest takeaways from NAB. So we've jumbled our way through our trip and
sitting at an hour, right?
Yeah, I noticed an hour and almost 5 minutes exactly. So did you have any, like, so what Morgan does better than I do is he brain dumps information and feeds it to Chat GPT and has it write himself a blog basically. And so I know you've got some notes taken, but like I've got 2 points I want to make for like my key takeaway from like the entire trip. But what's something that like really hit home with you? What's a key takeaway, or however many you have, you can just
Sure. I mean, I'll stick with two. My key takeaways were I was a little concerned about spending all my time talking to people because I was like, oh, I want to see all the things, but that's where I wanted that's my key takeaway is like talk to the people. Also, I'm one of those people that I'm not like an extrovert as much as you are. So I was a little concerned that I wasn't going to be able to interact with people as much, but NAB really broke that for me. Like I was able to, because I was like, okay, actually these people understand me. Because often like when I'm talking to family members or other friends that aren't in
cool,
this
Morgan.
industry, yeah, they're like, cool, great, you know, and you're like, oh, okay, you just don't understand. But being able to talk to an engineer, like I talked to the Blackmagic engineers about the super source thing that we
being
did
able to
for
pair the flying
children's
key
thing. Yeah. And he listened to me and he's like, you know, you're right. That's a use case we didn't really think about, you know? So that was a big takeaway for me was, you know, talking to people, and that's okay. And you're going to go back to the same booth multiple times, probably throughout the day. So that was really nice. So yeah, I mean, networking was a big thing. And then just, we did all this in 2 days. The show runs Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so 4 days.
And we possibly could get in on Saturday, but
yeah. So I think coming in earlier would be helpful. 2 days was great. I felt by the second day I saw mostly everything I wanted to see.
Yep.
And then my other takeaway is go on to the outside edges.
Yep.
Because that's where a lot of the smaller stuff is. Because you were telling me it costs so much per square feet, you know, and a lot of people are sharing booths. So you might try and find a company and like search for it on the app like I was trying to do, but you might not find it.
Like
they
Rode,
might be sharing. Yeah, like
Rode shared with B&H.
Yeah.
They didn't have, Rode could easily have their own display.
Yeah.
But they had a podcast set up, which was super cool.
Yeah.
And so it was like that.
So
that was a bigger booth, but there's also smaller ones that pair together.
Yeah.
So a different spectrum than B&H, which had a lot of stuff. They're all smaller, like Hive Lights was with another one.
Yeah.
And then there were a couple of microphone companies that paired together and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, that Maker X people, they were with Grass Valley, which I know as a big name.
Right.
And I was like, well, I don't want to go, like their stuff is more for like TV trucks and like much bigger things.
But the product that we found was absolutely incredible.
And that's because Grass Valley was kind of like sponsoring them, I guess.
That's cool.
So those are my takeaways. What are yours?
So I have three. The main one was that nobody there did chroma keying, and nobody there did what we do. Nobody. Not a single time did I go by green screen and go, oh yeah, that's kind of like what we do. Nope, not a single thing. It was that, and that was very encouraging to me. was that when we would show people our stuff, it was like, oh, you're in another level. You're on another level than what I'm seeing here. You guys are in a whole different league. And I explain it. And then especially when you're talking to lighting people who just automatically are interested in it, because it's like, you think of green screen as blasting light, and that's pretty boring. And here's what we do. Explain IRE, explain false color, which
shadows.
I asked a couple of people, like, you know what false color is? And like, they definitely knew what false color was, and that was a very dumb question. But like explaining that whole setup and explaining Rembrandt lighting, and not always, but really instead of saying Rembrandt lighting, understanding how we motivate the light on the sets. So I saw nobody doing that. The second one is working here can get stressful. And shout out to Andre, because I know you're listening to this. He is always pushing, and he is always going forward. And that's always going to happen because we want the best and the greatest at all times. So what I think is, sometimes to me that has felt frustrating. I just want to sit in, get the system to work. And why are we putting in 6K cameras a day before a shoot? Oh, well, because we got them, you know? Like, it can get frustrating. But what I'm now learning is it's important to stay on the cutting edge. And I wrote down is that helps you be able to educate others. And our lane in that world of NAB is not product. It is, but we're not selling a product to people, but we want to distribute information and show people what we do so that other people can get a better product that they can give people out of their chroma key setup. So staying on the cutting edge and always updating everything always means that you are a step ahead of other people trying to learn, and that puts you in a position to teach what you know. So that was a really cool aha moment for me, understanding that. I had a bunch of aha moments, obviously, because I keep saying that. And then another thing is like, you sort of already mentioned it, but how do we strategize positioning ourselves there, right? Maybe it's not our own booth. What do we do at a booth? You know, do we do a booth just for a setup, or we're not selling anything, so it's a little different. But like maybe going like, now I'm going to say this, and I don't know if Ron is ever going to watch this. But Ron came up to us when we met him, and he was like, "Don't." When we already had, but don't look at the Blackmagic setup. He knows we have the Ultimate. He knows we have the 4K. He knows we have the whole setup. So he's like, "Yeah, don't look at it," because he just wasn't happy with it, because what Blackmagic did was kind of create a small version of it and just blasted light, and it wasn't working the way that the Ultimate really can work.
It wasn't showing it in its best light,
right?
Yeah.
So why not pitch an idea of, hey, check out, this is what we do with your product. Why don't you let us think about a display to show off, to showcase who we are, but in partner with you guys to show off your product.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys do this? Wow, that's really cool that you have all this knowledge of lighting and how to do this, get this set up. But what do you use? Oh, we use these guys that this is who they are. That's sort of a pitch, and like, this is how we do it. So you get the information about what we know, and then you also understand the product from the other people.
Well, and they had a stage at their booth where they were teaching Da Vinci.
Right.
We could easily teach.
Yes. Yeah. In a Blackmagic workflow specifically.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We're Blackmagic end to end.
Right.
From our cameras to our switcher to the keyer to the recorder.
Yep. You know? And in my head, I've already thought, like, we're doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, I already know it's like, okay, if I continuously, I got to stop saying, if you watch other episodes. In another episode, we talked about Unreal. It was like 2 episodes ago. And we talked to people about the quick flip between spots in the entire environment.
Yeah.
So we had 3 sets in one spot. Well, it's like that. So like, imagine if we were at a booth and we had like our square light setup that we do with a table, that we wanted to put the table for somebody teaching. We had an actor, somebody who was teaching and reading from a teleprompter, and we were able to go, check this out, click the lighting button, switch it to lighting version A, which is for set A, which is the windows over here. This is how this is set up. And then we go lighting setup number B, or letter B, then we go to set number B, and it switches. So now the window's over here and this light's lit up, and we put the shadow side on this side. But to show the buildup of how we do the background, plus the way we would give different options for you to be able to use an Unreal environment in multiple ways, not just in one set. That's the kind of stuff that you don't see at NAB, and I think that is going to, if we could somehow do that. That would be the best position for us. And then Andre would probably speak at 200 booths. I mean, he's extremely good at what he does, which is, like, he literally is not here and didn't come to NAB because he's on his way to South Carolina to speak about his software company and take a little vacation. But so he that's in his bag of tricks. So like, it's like there's niches for us to fill there to show off what we do. And then like, he just needs to teach too. And on all of those panels, he would have got up there and, you know, I think there's a stigma around chroma key and the way that it feels. And I think that the only person for me to have, if I had to choose one person in the world for you to listen to change your mind about chroma key, it would be Andre Dantzler. So I think, yeah, that would be sort of our sort of, and I'm just manifesting here, people. Like, we just went to NAB for our first time ever, and I'm talking about partnering with Blackmagic, the biggest booth there.
Even if it's not them, or even if it's multiple partnerships. Because Vive had reached, when I did my interview with them, and they were like, man, you're giving us great answers and everything. But they're really interested in that education market. He was doing education seminars. Yeah, getting into high schools, getting into colleges. Because here's the thing, we need people. We need Unreal artists. We need people that know how to set up the Mars. You know, we need the people in the industry, because like, it won't go anywhere if there's nobody to do it.
Right,
you know?
and Vibe Mars is very much in that prosumer market where it's like, it's really good, but like, there are other companies who create the $200,000 model. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't have $200,000. I would hope to someday, but right now, Vive Mars is 5,000 the way to go. Yeah, exactly. And so, and I think also a point that you're bringing up is, it's like the prosumer level. If you have a base knowledge of that, moving up to the $200,000 level isn't as hard because you have a base knowledge. Yes. So that education. Yeah, that education standpoint is a really interesting thing to think about, because it is the base. Like, when you become a pilot, do they slap you in a 747 first thing? No, you're flying a Cessna 414. Yeah, you know what I mean, or maybe even smaller than that. That's sort of that's twin engine. So single engine. Yeah, exactly. So it's like that. It's like, yeah, you got to get the feel for that, and you know, And I said this at NAB, and I'm stealing this from somebody. One of our clients here says that Google took the quest out of question. And what that saying meant to me was, you can just look up the answer to things now and you know it. You don't go through the pain of learning and growing and understanding how to really use something that you're striving to. So by doing what we've done, like take our psych wall. We built our psych wall instead of buying a psych wall that's already done. And how much have we learned about that world that we now know a lot more because we didn't just buy the product. Right. Well, like Vive Mars and how people would learn to grow and experience some pain points. They wouldn't just get flown into that $200,000 product that's perfect. You know, it's like you don't have as many pain points for you to take a journey through understanding how to do algebra to make this thing not skip along and bounce as much. Yeah. You know what I mean? Through software. Right. And then you take that knowledge and you grow and you move on to that bigger product later in life, which is exactly the education piece that you're talking about.
So how do we sum this all up, wrap it up, put a nice little bow on it?
I already said that I would go to NAB every year until I die. So
I think we're definitely going every year.
100%.
Andre has made it a point that he's coming.
Yeah. So Andre had FOMO.
He made a statement to me that he was like, Morgan, you got to have dinner with the YouTubers. You got to meet all these people. There is not a price I would put on that. Yep. And for those watching, NAB, the tickets are absolutely free if you book it ahead of time to get into the actual conference part of it. Yep. It's the flights and the hotels that you have to just figure out. But I think our strategy of like, this was kind of a last minute trip for us.
Very much so. Yeah.
So I think we can look ahead and
oh yeah,
book our flights. But Resort World,
I was getting ready to say,
tunnel,
bro, Resort World. If you're going to NAB, maybe there's a cooler place to stay. Maybe you want to do Vegas.
There's the monorail.
Yeah,
that you
but
could take.
nah, dude.
No,
you had everything. We did not.
We didn't have to leave.
We Ubered from the airport to the hotel and from the hotel to the airport.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we were at NAB the whole time, and we took tunnels, RGB Tesla tunnels. Like I can't stop saying that enough because that was so cool in itself to see that. And like on our second day when we went to West the first day, and yes, that was cool. But on our second day when we went to Central, when you pull up in Central, there's like this grand station below, and it's just LED colors everywhere. And I'm sitting there shooting C-Log 2 on my freaking C70 in the front seat, and like I'll put this on there. It's gonna be on the little reel. But as we're pulling in, there's just this gull wing Tesla door opening, and it's like just wrapped in LED, just like all the colors you could imagine. And I'm just sitting there like, coolest shot of my life, coolest shot of my life. Yep, coolest shot of my life. Like all the way through. It was just, and then we got to go upstairs and ride the ride. Were you going to say something?
I just want to bring this in. Part of the cool part about taking the Teslas is like people get in the car with you sometimes just to get there faster.
Oh yeah.
So you never know who you're going to interact with. So like for me, when we did the YouTuber thing and we all went to dinner, I got
you filled
to ride
the car
with Doug and all the YouTubers because we were just getting in the same car, which was really cool. So we got to talk about the Teslas and talk to their driver and be like, hey, is this automated yet? Things like that. The answer is no. They're still drivers, and they are actually driving the car. I thought they were just like, they're just in case. But they are actually driving those cars.
100% driving the car.
But we got the ride back. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so the guy driving is like, where are you from? And I answered for us. What do we do? I answered for us. And I said, man, I can't speak for that guy behind me. And he was like, yeah, I work for A&E.
Post-production. He's in the post-production house, like supervisor or something. He's like high up.
So it was like, not only were we riding in RGB Tesla tunnels, but we were riding in RGB Tesla tunnels with that guy.
Yeah.
And like got to talk to him for a minute. And it was like, that is the kind of the kind of hands that you will shake at an event, not only at the event, but surrounding this event, is priceless because you never know where those connections are going to come from.
Yep. So big takeaways. We'll be definitely going back every year.
Yeah, figuring out a way to set up. Staying on the cutting edge of technology is very important for us and to us. And I had my eyes opened to that by just thinking while I was there and understanding that Andre is insane and is insane about the way we push into things for all the right reasons.
Yeah. And then having our QR code business cards.
Yeah, QR code business card. Reel. Everybody loved that, dude. I've got a ton of emails to make because I've got paper business cards.
Yep.
But ours, you just had to click a couple buttons and we were emailing each other immediately.
Yeah. And then lastly was, this is something Andre and I talked about is, hey, if you're having issues with a product and you know that company is going to be there at NAB, document it. Take pictures. Because I talked to prompter people about our teleprompter issue that we have with the vignetting and some of the other problems that we're having.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, well, it sounds like
your glass is
the wrong product to clean our glass. I didn't know about that.
I didn't either.
And I was like, oh,
we're using glass cleaner, but they're like, oh, no, it's
that ended up
distilled water and something else.
Alcohol, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and they were really cool. And they're like, hey, if you did mess it up, like they gave me some other things to try first, but they said, if you messed it up, call us. We'll get you a replacement. And I'm like, that's awesome. Yeah. Oh, and then they gave me their software.
And when you call them, they're probably going to be like, yeah, what's up, Morgan?
Yeah.
You're like, and I'm on a name basis with the people that we work with, which is extremely important.
So again, if you have issues with any product that
take your pictures, take your examples. They want evidence. They want to see. Yeah. They're not, you can talk to them, but if you can show them, they're going to want to jump into action.
And even if you can't show them on the show floor, many of them gave me their cell phone or email. And they're like, call
the Waves people and a few others that we're going to be talking to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we said let's wrap it up at an hour and 4 minutes, and we've gone way past that. So I think the last thing I'll say again, and I'll say it every episode, liking and subscribing. Please, if you guys will, you can also hit that notification bell so that every time we release one of these episodes, you guys will know, blah, 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 normal YouTuber content speak. The last thing, very last thing is the merch at NAB is sick.
Yes.
We got a bunch of fun stuff, but also they sell t-shirts. So like if you've seen this one so far, and then Morgan's, it's a broadcasting thing you wouldn't understand. Or what the F for f-stop. And stuff like that is there. And you can order that kind of stuff online, but to be there and buy it from the people who like understand the humor with you, and just the conversations surrounding that in itself is also something that's a huge attraction and a big reason people should go to NAB.
Get it on day one.
Get it on day one.
Once it runs out, it's out.
Okay, we're ending this after this, but buy merch on day one and ride the rides that on the second to last day, because there won't be many lines. Not only the Unreal ride that we went on, but we also sat in a truck in a car with screens around us, and they shot a mini feature film about Morgan and us driving through Las Vegas.
We'll put that at the end.
Yeah,
that'll be our closing.
Yes, that's the last thing. Okay, so right now, goodbye, because we're going to play that video for you right here.